All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. And we have the privilege this time of talking with Mr. Shane Corson. Uh, Shane is involved with all sorts of cool stuff, Bigfoot, and I'll have him talk about that in a minute. But the way that I picture it is doing research into Shane. It's kind of like if you have the Marvel Avenger movies and you know Agent Coulson is there at the beginning, and then when you start to look for Agent Coulson, he's everywhere. So I mean, you have your hands in everything, sir. Would you mind going ahead and kind of what's a brief summary of who you are and what you've done in the Bigfoot community over the last few years? I guess we'll start there.
Okay. Well, I don't claim to have done anything, but I'll tell you, I was born and raised in Scotland. Had an interest in cryptids as a youngin'. I was always fascinated with, of course, living in Scotland, you're fascinated with the Loch Ness Monster and Yeti and other cryptids that are, around the world. Always fascinated with the subject of Sasquatch. Moved over to the States in 93.
Okay.
Still fascinated with the Sasquatch phenomena. I really did not start getting into Sasquatch research, or what I thought was Sasquatch research, until about 97. And that's kind of when I got my wheels and was able to travel doing research in Southern California, where we moved to, around San Bernardino Mountain, Julian area. And then definitely Yosemite was on my radar for a number of years. Yosemite was fascinating to me. Talked to a lot of great individuals that had encounters, but I personally never found anything during my years in California. Eventually moved up to Oregon. Got married, moved up to Oregon in 2008. And that's really where I started hitting the ground heavy up in Oregon.
Yep.
And had an encounter in 2011 that solidified the existence of Sasquatch for me.
Okay.
And from there, I realized that being a one-man band, somebody that is going about their business by themselves, was not very productive. I realized that I really wasn't doing research. I was investigating stuff. I read every book out there, been online. I really had no context at that point. I talked to a few individuals and eventually got involved with the Olympic project after my encounter, and got involved with like Cliff Barrickman and those individuals.
Very cool.
And that's kind of really jumped my research in joining a group and realizing that there's more to research than what you think. And I really wasn't conducting research. I'm up in Washington State, up in Western Washington here, where we do a lot of research. And I work, I'm one of the core members of the Olympic Project now. And I work with a amazing and fantastic group of like-minded individuals, both from the layman world and the academic world. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I've been working on a lot of projects. I've been around the block. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on now. There's a lot of cool stuff that's happened. So I'm very proud to be working with the individuals that I work with and collaborating with them. And, I'm always an optimist. A lot of people get frustrated in this field. Not me. I see all sorts of opportunities. In fact, right before this interview here, I just got off the phone with somebody that's working on an amazing project, very scientific project. And so always things going on behind the scenes.
Very cool. Very cool. Where to start? So there's a lot of ways we could go. So if I'm sure my listeners listen to Bigfoot and Beyond with Cliff and Bobo as well, you had a fantastic episode on that, and you referenced something that I wanted to ask you. If you had been in the room, I would have asked you right there. So you mentioned the Olympic project, and I believe what you mentioned was that in the coming year, you would actually be having primatologists coming to the area. Did I get that right from the episode, or maybe did I hear that not correctly?
Are you talking about the Nest area?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we've actually already had primatologists
come
out. Yeah, we've had primatologists come out to this area. We've had bear biologists come out to this area. We've had anthropologists, archaeologists. We've had even zoologists, which was the most recent
Okay.
two individuals came out from a certain zoo here in the United States, not in Washington, but a certain zoo. I
Okay.
can't mention it,
Yep.
but they came out and we really wanted to get their feedback on, these nests. When it comes to known primate behavior, these individuals work directly with chimpanzees, bonobos,
Mm.
silverback gorillas. So we really wanted to get their feel on these nests because they're not bear nests, and they're definitely nests, and they're formulated. Dr. Meldum's talked about these nests loads of times. So it's Cliff. They've both been out to the area and helped us collect samples. So yes, we brought in a lot of academic individuals out there because we're not, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an academic individual. I'm an explorer. I find stuff. I collect stuff, and sometimes I'll visually analyze stuff, but I have my limits, and I recognize those.
Hmm.
And so you got to bring in
Sure.
people with the right eye. So yeah, we've done that. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. If listeners do not know the nest we are talking about, of course, um, and you can fill in details as we go along, of course, but you have access to an area of land where it had not been touched for, was it 40 years?
Yeah, 50 plus years.
Yeah, 50 plus years. So, like a logging company. And there's these nests that were found on there. And I mean, they're big enough for, I believe it was either you or Cliff said that you could lay down in the nest, and it was quite comfortable. And man, it's fascinating. There was one part where it's like, you're saying from one nest, you could see the other nests.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was very fascinating.
Yeah, the Huckleberry. So all these
Yes.
nests, there's 22 nests found to date, spread along a ridge line, and they're spread out on fingers or saddles or ridges, depending where you're from the country. Everybody calls it something different, but you have a ridge line with a finger or a ridge or a saddle coming down, and they're spread out on multiple saddles, fingers, ridges, or and whatnot. And they're definitely formulated. They've been constructed
Mm-hmm.
intelligently. They're not something that's been haphazardly put together. And by what I meant when I said and when I say that you can see from nest to nest, well, that's on purpose. The huckleberry
Yeah.
branches have been stripped completely of leaves, whether that was a food source or on purpose to see from
Wow.
nest to nest to nest. And they're very strategically placed, these nests. But yeah, you can see every nest, and they range in size from about 3 feet to about 9 feet in size and circumference. So I mean, huge, and
That's
over
awesome.
a foot in depth. I mean, just huge, a lot of material.
That is very, very cool. A question I also thought of the other day is, of course, right now we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. How has that affected the work of the Olympic project?
Tremendously.
Yeah.
Nobody gets paid to do Sasquatch research. We all
Sure.
have day jobs. We have families. And so it's really, there's a lot of stuff we can do at home. And fortunately, we do have access to, when it comes to research, we do have access to timberland. We have gate keys and whatnot. And
Okay.
that's where we conduct a lot of our business. But this whole COVID thing, regardless of what you think of it and how it's
Yep.
affected you, it's affected
Yep.
everybody economically, socially, you name it. And so I can speak for a lot of enthusiasts, Bigfoot researchers, you name it, that it's affected it big time. You can't get into some areas that you used to be able to get into legally. I mean, I'm sure people are
Sure.
sneaking out. Here in Washington, they closed down. It's opening up May 5th, all the trails and parks and whatnot, but it's affected it tremendously. And what it's really done for the Olympic project recently, kind of jumping ahead here, we've come across some newer nests. Finally,
Oh,
after
wow.
searching for 5 years now, we came across a new nest. I can't really get into the details right now,
Okay.
but a partner of mine by the name of Todd Hale, he's a project member. We were out scouting an area that Derek Randalls and I had scouted 2 weeks prior. Well, we went back out to this area and came across something physically making a nest. Did not see it, but spooked it. Sounded very large, sounded bipedal.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite the experience. And I won't get into that right now. That's some stuff we're working on. But we did come across a nest in the making, or multiple nests in the making, and we came across a lot of other really unique and very cool tidbits to this that it proved a lot of things to us. We were in the right area. the right time of year, the right circumstances, and we just got really lucky and walked upon something making a new nest. But to get back to your question, well, I have some samples that I've collected, that we've collected as a whole as a LIM project, that I can't send it anywhere right now. You know it,
Yeah.
and it sucks because some of these samples, they go to junk after a while. It's time sensitive sort of stuff. And some, we got some hair samples, for example. Some of that you could visually analyze, but to do any real work on it, it's really been. It was just, this whole virus is the worst timing, and we talked about that as a group. The worst timing ever. Unfortunate, but upwards and onwards. You keep plugging away, and we'll see if anything comes from this. No promises, no guarantees, but exciting. It tells me we're doing something right, regardless. You can say regardless of what's making these nests. We came across whatever was making it fresh, and that's awesome.
That is really exciting. And maybe you can start to see a pattern, like, okay, it's this time of year, who knows the data that you'll get from this. Like this, that is super exciting. And you said that's very recent that happened.
Yeah, this happened back in February. So
wow.
I mean, super recent. And
very cool.
The real key there is that we hypothesized originally that the older nest that we were led to, we didn't discover the old nest. They were discovered originally by a timber cruiser in a really remote area doing his job. These areas aren't places you go hiking in, you go hunting in, exploring in. They're off trail. They're hard to get to. It's a nightmare. And he came across them. Well, we started to mimic what he was doing for years, and possibly came across some very, very old nests. So we're kind of on the right track. Maybe, we don't know. And then we come across this, and that was in the month of February again, with the same elements. You got the salmon coming up these creeks. You got a lot of things going for you. So you're right. It does add value to that, and it's exciting. Tells us we're on the right track.
Oh man, that is very cool. You've also been involved with the Devil's Creek project, and that was a few years ago, where there was a lot of that, those stories going around, and what was going on. Would you be able to kind of there's a chance there's some listeners that, when I say Devil's Creek, they might not know what I'm talking about, but would you be able to maybe give a summary of that scenario? And then you'd mentioned before our call started that you actually have some new things that you can share, some things you can't, because it's special situation. But yeah, if you go ahead with that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So several years ago, Derek Randalls was contacted by an individual by the name of Donna. Her husband's name is Greg, up here in Western Washington on the east side of the Olympics. And they had a lot of suspicious activity going on their property. Well, Donna's husband, Greg, he worked all around. He works all around the country. So he was rarely home. And Donna had all the stuff, weird stuff happening, noises, stuff happening on the property. And her husband, Greg, when he was home, would witness some of this. The majority seemed to happen when she was home, but he got to witness a lot of unique things, especially audio, things they found on their property. And so they got a hold of Derek Randalls of the Olympic Project, and he came out, and Derek's not an audio guy. And so he got them in touch with David Ellis of the Olympic Project, who is like the audio guru. He looks at audio visually on a sonic visualizer program. And so he's not just listening, because your ear will play tricks on you. But if you can visually analyze something and listen to it, it really adds value. And you can compare those recorded sounds to the Macaulay Library of Sounds, for example. So you have a context and a baseline to compare unknown sounds, at least unknown to you. And so David and Donna really started placing audio recorders on the property. Well, I mean, to backtrack a little bit, Donna had a sighting near her property, when they were driving up the road to their property, just down the road in what it's been coined Devil's Creek. And let me clarify something. There is no Devil's Creek. There's no Devil's Creek. It was a name made up by a third party that got involved. At first, a lot of us really didn't like the name Devil's Creek because there are Devil's Creeks around the country. This was a pseudo name, just a made up name. We stuck with it mainly because there was a lot of individuals trying to find this area, and we wanted to throw them off. They were trying to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
That was
clever
smart.
people out there.
That was very smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they find spots. So we stuck
Yep.
with Devil's Creek. Not the greatest name, and a little bit disingenuous, but there was a reason behind that.
Sure.
Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot. That creek plays a huge role in this whole experience, this phenomena. And so after David L. started recording stuff, Donna, previously had her sighting. I started getting involved in going up there, placing audio, and I spent quite a few nights out there on the property, had some of my own experiences, no sightings, and I do have FLIR equipment. I tried very thick, hilly area, and it wasn't like every night. It was every once in a while, but this went on for several years. And I did get the chance. Donna called me up one day and said, hey, well, basically, backtrack a little bit some more. Don and Greg actually moved out of that house, planning on renting it or possibly selling it. They got another house, well, not nearby, but about an hour's away from this place. They got another house, so they're paying 2 mortgages, and they wanted to do something with this property, but they knew that it was important for research, and so they weren't ready to give it up. I mean, God bless them, because we did record a lot of neat stuff on the property, experienced a lot of neat stuff. And as they were living on this separate property, they were trying to fix up this house, and they hired a contractor, a contracting business, to come up and fix one of their, like a kind of a guest house / garage. And lo and behold, this guy, one of the contractors had a sighting, possibly 2 sightings in the area. And he knew nothing about the Bigfoot phenomenon going on in the property. He knew nothing about it. I interviewed
That's the best part. That's the best part, where he's like, it's a little weird. I don't know what's going on. That's
exactly,
awesome. Yeah.
Exactly. We talked about this on Monster X Radio, my podcast, but the point being is that it was phenomenal. And, and going through this area over the years and studying this area, some of the elderly neighbors that live close by, one of the women who has an apple orchard in this area, she knew there was Sasquatch. She straight up told Donna one day, without Donna really, insinuating anything. Yeah, it's Sasquatch. It's up in this area. So there's a lot of collaboration there, a lot of ideas there, where other people are aware of this. Other people have seen stuff, and there's no, it's not as if they're having a discussion on Sasquatch. It just pops up.
Okay.
And then historically in this area, there's multiple reports. Some project gets taken in personally. I've had people that are close in the know of this area that have talked about other reports from neighbors and people within a couple of square miles. In some of the lakes in this area, there's reports. So why Donna was having this activity on the property, I don't know. She was home alone. Her house was like a lot of really big windows where something from the forest line could watch her. There was apple orchards in the area. A lot of hypothesizing here, but no doubt she had tremendous amount of activity on this property. Now, fast forward, there were some unfortunate events that took place. Unfortunately, Don and Greg sold the property, and they no longer have access to the property. There's still stuff going on in some adjacent areas that I follow, but it's not an area you can get into without getting into trouble, and it's private property and all that stuff. So it's a real shame there. But I get
that's terrible.
Paying 2 mortgages, and just that Donna did not feel comfortable staying there anymore, and they had to leave. So as far as Devil's Creek's concerned, there's not really anything ongoing there now as far as research. I've not been in contact with the new inhabitants. They're not aware of any of the stuff that went on there. I'm not sure if they're experiencing anything.
That's a story in itself. It's like, did they know what they were getting into buying that property? And like, if they're just slowly, I don't think it would be slow. I think it would be quick that they would figure out, like, there's something going on here, who knows?
Right. I mean, all bets are off. I don't know. I do know that there's still some occasional activity in that general area. I still get reports from that area. I do still visit some of the adjacent areas, but it's not, as far as the property is concerned, I can't get access to that. And definitely, in my personal opinion, they definitely have Sasquatch stuff going on. I mean, no doubt about it, with the multiple sightings from different individuals. And the things that have occurred with me, I've had rocks thrown and stuff like that. And I couldn't spend enough time there. I really wanted to capture something on a FLIR. and I spent many nights there by myself, edge of the property. Had a lot of experience. I never got anything on FLIR. The brush is so thick, and whatever it was would never get close enough for me to get on FLIR. So it is what it is.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing that. That's a really cool update. I had no idea
Yeah, that's
that
not really
happened.
been
Yeah.
shared. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But I'll tell real quick,
You never
I'll
know.
tell you,
Yeah.
Don and Greg, sorry to interrupt you. Don and Greg are two fantastic, phenomenal individuals. I have the utmost respect for them. Donna and David Ellis did phenomenal audio work on the property. And I know Donna's very thankful for David Ellis and Derek and myself. Two stand-up individuals that didn't ask for this. It just happened. And they were willing to go along and do what they could to a certain extent. And unfortunately, things didn't work out with their lives and with the property. But the chance to get involved with one of these rare occurrences where you have this consistent activity happening on the property, not necessarily year round, but consistently, that's the sort of places you want to be in. Because I'm not per se an ambulance chaser. I don't, those days are past. I don't, Derek Randall's the Olymp Project, the co-founder of the Olymp Project, taught me this years ago. He for years, he's been in research since 1985. And he used to go to Idaho. I mean, living in Washington, would go to Idaho at the drop of a hat looking for, if there was an encounter, he'd drive out there or wherever. And
Okay.
you can get a lot of good information on that, but it's almost, the crime's done. And to find a place where there's a lot of activity and it's ongoing, that's really not ambulance chasing. You're trying to do a conductive study there and figure out what's going on.
True.
So that's something I think when those occurrences happen, and it's happened a few times in my experience with this research and some others, that's the places you really want to be.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm going to throw out a random left field question just to see if anything sticks.
I'll
If it
swing.
doesn't, we'll go to somewhere else. So you've had all these, you're focused on Bigfoot. I'm in the Midwest area. We have a lot of things flying around, Thunderbirds, stuff like that. Have you ever run into any weird stuff? I don't know. Is that a thing where those actually will come up in the Pacific Northwest, large flying cryptids or anything like that, or not really a thing that you run up against?
Well, here's the thing. Growing up, I was interested in a lot of cryptids. Not involved. I was interested in all sorts of cryptids. So I'm well versed on a lot of cryptids up here in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, you go to Portland and that there's a big sign that says "Keep Portland Weird" down in Oregon.
No,
where I used to live.
it's great. Yeah.
And it is weird. The Pacific Northwest is a weird spot. There's a lot of things that people will claim to see. They have a Cadborosaurus on the coast that apparently it's like a water cryptid. It goes from San Francisco all the way up to Alaska. They call it Caddy. There's, of course, the large thunderbirds. There's, pterodactyl pteranodon sightings. Apparently, you got UFO sightings. I personally never seen any of that stuff. And I live in the woods and I spend ungodly amount of time in the woods. I've never personally come across, I've never seen any weird orbs or lights, none of that stuff. But you do hear stories from credible people that claim to have seen, Cadborosaurus or a flying cryptid that's much larger and acting peculiar. You do have people claiming to see lights in the woods or UFOs. I mean, Washington State, I think one of the really first big UFO sightings was around Mount Rainier back in, the 60s, 50s, or 70s, I forget, flying discs. So it's an area where there's a lot of stuff that happens up here and different cryptids, mainly though, my focus and mainly what I come across is Sasquatch sightings up here. And it's way more prevalent than people will ever guess. For every, one sighting you hear about or two sightings you hear about, I can only imagine how many more sightings are out there that, from people that are either not willing to talk or just don't have an opportunity to talk about it.
Very cool. Very cool. You'd mentioned before that you spent time in the Yosemite area early on. Can you go in? I visited that area. It's a beautiful area. And I'll paint a little picture. When we drove there from Cupertino area, you lose cell service
Mm.
like 2 hours outside of the park. It
Mhm.
felt like it was nuts. And there was a part when we were like driving around in this little electric car up these hills, and like we had to stop, and literally, if you had stepped, you always hear people say this, if you stepped a foot off the road, you would be lost, like you'd be done. It
Yeah.
was prehistoric and it was amazing. Do you have any can you recall anything that happened around that area, or like any cool stories about researching that area? Or
Yeah, I mean, so from when one of my old girlfriends worked at Yosemite, and that really was
oh, nice.
a kick in the pants to get up there even more so. But Yosemite, when I remember going through um, a tunnel and coming to an area, Inspiration Point, and seeing
Hmm.
the Yosemite Valley, and was absolutely amazing. A guy
Yeah.
from Scotland that got to witness that. I was enthralled. I could see why, Theodore Roosevelt and some of these others, said this is God's country. It's just amazing
Hmm.
country. Just amazing. So I fell in love with it. And of course I heard about all these Sasquatch reports in the Sierras and Yosemite and all that. So I made it a point, even though I lived in San Diego, it was like 11, 12-hour drive. I would do it as much as
Mm.
I could. And I did it for
Yeah.
years.
Wow.
Amazing area. I've been all around Yosemite, backpacking Yosemite. I've been up to Half Dome. I've been all around El Cap,
Oh, wow.
Yosemite Falls. I've been all around there, and I always like to backpack, off trail and off country. I personally, I've had a lot of bear encounters up there, a ton of bear encounters. There's bears up
Really?
there galore. Oh
Oh,
yeah,
man.
I'm chasing from my camp up there. I never personally had a Bigfoot encounter up there. I came across one impression I thought was interesting. Could have been a
Hmm.
double bear stamp. The most interesting thing that I took away from Yosemite, besides just that it's so vast,
It is.
and there's a lot of people that go there. I talked to a former park ranger. She was a female, and she was working the El Cap area below the base,
Okay.
near a hotel out there, and she had something throwing rocks at her. And when she looked up from this little bluff, she saw this black shadow, and it took off bipedally up the hill. And I heard
Oh,
that first
wow.
person. Now we're talking 97 through about 2006 is kind of the time frame I would go up there. Really,
Okay.
I didn't back in 97. I had a beeper. I didn't really have a cell phone, so it wasn't like I could get cell phone reception anyways. But
That's awesome.
there are a lot of missing people in that area. But I'll tell you, you can get lost up there easy. And um, I mean, the last time I was there last summer, I realized I will never go there during the height of the season. I took my family down there.
Hmm.
They had never been there. My 8-year-old daughter and my wife, we took them out. I took them out there on our way down to San Diego, driving down from Washington. We sat in our car for over an hour trying to get into the park. It was a
Oh,
nightmare.
man. Really?
There's so many people, millions of people.
Wow.
I forget the number, but it's over 1 million people that go through the park every year. You got that many people come through a
Yeah.
park, and you got a lot
Yeah.
of tourists from out of the country. They don't speak English, that had no business being in the woods. People are going to get hurt, and people are going to disappear. So it's no shock to me that I always get, "Oh, Yosemite's a hotspot." Well, yeah, but when you have that number of people that go through that area, it's to be expected. I can't count how many times that I came across hurt people or lost people out there while I was hiking, and the
Oh,
amount of
really?
dangers out there. Oh yeah,
Wow.
all the time. I mean, I experienced that up here in the Pacific Northwest hiking the Olympics. There's
Sure.
people that are unprepared or ill prepared and don't know what they're doing. So, yeah, I mean, Yosemite, I have no doubt there's probably Sasquatch down there. I just, in talking to a few people that had experiences, really solidified that for me. But I never had an encounter down there. But, when you live 11, 12 hours away and you're kind of like
Yep.
glorified camping because you're just doing it for a weekend or 4 days or whatever, you can only do so
Yeah.
much. And it's an area that you need to live in. The Sierras, beautiful, tons of wildlife. And if you think Yosemite is primordial or Jurassic Park-ish, come up to
Hmm.
Washington State or Oregon, specifically Washington State up in the Olympics, where you got
Oh,
moss and
I've
rainforest.
been
It's
there. I've
crazy.
been there. Yeah,
Good.
we hiked the whole rainforest.
Oh, the whole rainforest is crazy. Yeah,
It's nuts. Yeah,
primordial.
we've been to the Forks area and all that.
Yeah.
That's a different story. But the whole rainforest is simply beautiful.
Oh, amazing.
Unexpected part of the trip, definitely.
Yeah, amazing area.
Um, man. as we start to kind of get towards the end of our time here, um, what is what is kind of next for? I know the Olympic project is probably the main focus of your time with squatching. Um, is there anything that maybe you can um, tease us with, something that you guys are working towards? Or I guess you did say that you found these new vests, which nests, which are huge. That's a huge deal, because you thought that that was a dead end, but then finding new ones, that's incredible. Um, so
Yeah. So basically, so you know, this initial nest site that was discovered by this timber cruiser was probably the most exciting thing, and still is the most exciting thing I've ever worked on, based on a number of factors, based on just so many different things. And historically speaking, there's been other nests found, but just not this many, and not studied like this, where you have unknown hair that matches primate hair, as Dr. Meldrum will tell you. You
that's
have
awesome.
nests formulated and constructed. The Huckleberry breaks and snaps, and how it was formulated. You needed a opposable thumb. You had rocks that had score marks found. You had bush nests off the ground that were constructed like the ground nests. So still, it was and still is the most exciting thing. Now, going forward, well, finally, after 4 years, we've come across some possibly new nests, but
So
actually
cool.
being, I just, and all we had as a goal as a team was to find more nests, and
Yeah.
as new as can be. I had no idea that we were going to come across something making a nest
Oh man,
as it was
that is
being
so
made.
cool.
And now we got some samples, we got some casts of different things that
Wow,
I'll eventually release. We've had
very
some
cool.
really key people involved with helping us cast this stuff. And so going forward, really, it's we're not ambulance chasing. We're studying this one area, this
Mm-hmm.
one vast area,
Yep. Yep.
as much as we can, collecting audio. We do use some trail cameras, but lightly.
Yeah.
Uh, and we're just, studying the area, getting to know all the known animals in this area, all the sounds they make, so that we can roll in or rule out what we're recording if it's suspicious. Collecting data from this new nest site, looking for new nest sites. But at the same time, we're also, here's the thing, something's making these nests and making them for a reason. And,
Mm-hmm.
part of you, when you're out there, and you feel guilty because you disturbed something, and the amount of work that went into making, like, even this new nest, it was in the process of making it, the amount of work. When my partner and I disrupted it, when I got back to our camp, because it was in the evening, we just kind of, we backed out of there. It was getting dark, went on. I don't care what's making, I didn't want to disturb it, and didn't
Mm-hmm.
know if we were in a good spot to be disturbing anything.
Yeah.
Eventually, we went back in there the next day with a few more people and discovered what we discovered. But part of you feels guilty for disrupting something, making that. But it is what it is, and
Yeah.
and we'll study that area. It's disturbed, so we're constantly looking for new nests. At the same time, we're also trying to be not jerks. If something's making a nest for a little one or a baby or a newborn, who are we to go in these areas and disturb them and
That's a good
disrupt
point.
that
That's
that
a good
amount of
point.
work? So it's a
Yep.
catch-22. The
Yeah.
same, science moves on, but at the same time, I don't want it. I'd rather come find the nest later after it's been departed.
Yep. Exactly.
So that's
Yep.
kind of where we're at, and that's what we're focused on, is finding new nests and studying these nests and learning everything we can about these new nests. And the Olympic project is not about proving Sasquatch exists. We're about studying what we already pretty much know to exist. The majority of our Limit Project members, we do have
Love that.
skeptics and those individuals that never had an encounter, but we're about collecting as much data. So when that day comes across that Sasquatch is proven, we already have everything laid out there for
Yeah.
academia to look at.
You're good to go.
And
Yep.
yeah, it's so fun. And it gets us out in the woods, which we enjoy, and we have a great group.
Right. Because at the end of the day, you're still spending a lot of good time in nature, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong.
Um, if people want to uh, keep track of what you're doing, what is the best things for them to look at? Website or social media, what have you?
Yeah, so we have our website we're still building upon this and working on it. A lot of us, like I said, we have day jobs, so it's hard to keep up, but we do keep
Right.
up. So olympicproject.com, you can send emails there. anything audio and all that you can share, and we will get back to you at some point in time. David Ellis kind of really leads that, pardon me, at this point in time. Of course, I do host my own podcast called Monster X Radio, and you can reach me or my partner Gunnar Monson at monsterxradio1gmail.com.
Okay.
And, so I'm on Facebook, Shane Corson. So if you got any, you can reach out to me on Facebook at Shane Corson, and I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and all that stuff. But the limitproject.com is probably the best way. And we have lots of resources and lots of individuals on there. David Ellis, Derek Randalls, myself, just a ton of, Cindy Dosen, a ton of different individuals from different backgrounds and different fields that may be able to help you out, or just check out the website and it'll be updated even more so down the road here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you again, Shane, for coming on tonight and spending a little bit of time with the Bigfoot Society podcast, and some pretty cool updates. I'm sure all the listeners out there will be checking out the Olympic Project website and keeping track of what you guys find next. So thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.